Shots were fired between the Russian and Ukrainian forces at a training building outside the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in the southeast of Ukraine. This has led to a fire breaking out of that particular area. The plant spokesperson saying the recent Russia-Ukraine developments are causing a danger to the nation, adding that firefighters are battling to access the site to extinguish the blaze. The Zaporizhzhia plant is the largest in Europe.
Пожежа на Запорізькій АЕС триває. Вогнеборці не можуть дістатися місця загорання та ліквідувати наслідки. Розстрілюють впритул. Вже є попадання в перший енергоблок. Зупиніться. В результаті обстрілів пожежа на атомній електростанції. Повторюю, в результаті обстрілів військами Російської Федерації в бік Запорізької АЕС виникла пожежа.
Still on this story, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on European authorities to wake up as the nuclear power plant is in danger.
Європа зараз повинна прокинутися. Горить найбільша атомна станція Європи. Прямо зараз російські танки розстрілюють атомні блоки. Це танки, обладнані тепловізорами. Тобто вони знають, куди стріляють. Вони до цього готувались.
Right, let's continue the conversation now around the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Joining us now is international relations expert, Professor John Stremlau. Prof, thank you very much for your time. Can I get your thoughts on the latest developments? And it's around this Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. What is your assessment of the situation as it holds right now?
Well, my assessment is, as you suggested earlier, it's a dramatic escalation of the conflict, and it seems to be suggestive that Vladimir Putin wants to destroy Ukraine in order to save it, by his terms, because yesterday he did have a 90-minute conversation with President Macron of France, and President Macron said his bottom line from the conversation was that Putin is determined to win at any cost. And Putin has been signaling his intention, if necessary, from his perspective, to escalate to nuclear instruments. But I hadn't really thought about isolating the nuclear power plant that is now being done and set on fire. I remember he isolated Chernobyl, and Chernobyl in 1986 was a terrible catastrophe, but it was much contained, and it's one half the size of the Zaporizhzhia plant in the southern part of the country. So this has been on notice, and I know that there's calls for a UN Security Council special emergency session, and I know President Biden has talked to President Zelensky, and everyone is really quite nervous about this, and you just wonder what Putin has up its sleeve.
Prof, we're going to come back to the nuclear element of this conversation, because that should not only worry the people of Ukraine, I should think that the whole world should be worried when the conversation around nuclear come into question. Let's talk about what perhaps was always the question when this invasion started, and that is to say, how far would the Russian president go? And I couple that question with another one which says, is it a foregone conclusion that the capital city of Ukraine, Kiev, is ultimately going to fall into the hands of Russians?
On the second question, I think it will, but it's more complicated in light of the likely resistance that will persist despite the falling of Kiev. What is so disturbing, what is profoundly disturbing, is that Putin apparently thought it would be a cakewalk into Ukraine, and he would take over and put his own leader in power in Ukraine. And like Belarus, he would be one more step toward reestablishing the hegemony of Russia over the neighboring states. But in fact, the resistance has proved to be, over the last 7 days, much more stronger than he, I think, anticipated. And what you're now finding is that they are turning to a siege strategy, which is to surround Kyiv and to bomb the civilian targets, cluster bombs, and the videos that are coming out, because we are now in a video age, and oftentimes you need to check and be sure that the New York Times, for example, has verified, or BBC, some responsible journalism, or you guys, but because there's a lot of disinformation around. But the filming is dramatic and very, very disturbing. Again, you wonder, what is it that Putin hopes to recover from this struggle? His earlier talk about denuclearization of Ukraine. Well, Ukraine denuclearized after its independence, and Russia signed a treaty saying it would never interfere in the internal affairs of Ukraine. And look where we are.
Oh, Professor. Then, if we agree, Prof, that Kiev at some point is going to fall into Russian hands, I've got to ask you the question about President Zelensky's determination to stay put in Kiev while the advancing Russian troops get menacingly close to the capital. Simple question: how much bloodletting will Zelensky allow until such time he surrenders?
I don't know, because what we found is that Zelensky has really risen to the challenge. I think we all thought, he's an ex-comedian and a popular president, but his popularity had taken a hit in recent year or two, and yet he has stepped up to the plate. Always in history, the contingencies you don't expect, and he's really rallied his nation, and the nation was rallied anyway, since they've been fighting the Russians in the eastern provinces since 2014, when Putin first broke the rules by annexing Crimea, and then this time Putin really overstepped, and as a result, I think Zelensky is going to go down fighting, to tell you the truth, and he's been offered to be removed with the help of the Americans and stuff. And he said, "Don't give me an airplane ticket. Give me bullets." And the resistance, I think, has been a real surprise. I underestimated that, and I think it's going to persist after the occupation by the Russians, which overwhelmingly has the force behind them. They've got 200,000 troops at least in Ukraine now, and yet the Ukrainians managed to frustrate them.
Yeah. Prof, I want to talk a bit about the Russian president, Vladimir Putin's state of mind, and infuse into that conversation the element of nuclear. There's an article I read in the Sunday Times last week, and in that article, it says that the Kremlin analysts who have been studying Putin's behavior for many years admitted that they completely misjudged the man when it comes to invading Ukraine, because they thought all this time he had been bluffing. The question is, Prof, what's the worst that Putin can do if he feels cornered by the European powers?
That's speculation, and he has surprised us all by his determination to see this through, when he's given very flimsy reasons for what he's doing. For a while he was talking about denazification of Ukraine, and yet here you've got a Jewish president. He was talking about disarming, but as I say, there was already a treaty that they would never have nuclear weapons, and the NATO powers have assured Putin repeatedly that while they won't rule out the eventual membership, because they can't really, but under the terms of NATO, but they certainly are not going to have it anytime soon, and this would be the source of negotiations that South Africa keeps calling for, But Putin doesn't seem to be interested in negotiations, and he has, for a long time, wanted to correct what he feels was the greatest failure of the 20th century, which was the collapse of the former Soviet Union and reestablished Russian hegemony like an old Tsar would. But that's an 18th century or 19th century aspiration. What we have now is a globalization, and you're realizing that there is a lot of ways that Russia was connected to the rest of the world, that his people will probably be very unhappy by losing those connections. And whether or not there's any resistance, the last 2 independent stations have just been shut down in Russia. So he runs it with an iron hand, but that iron hand may be a little rusty. You just don't know.
Prof, final question to you. The reason I asked you the question I did was to prompt yet another question related to the possibility of nuclear really becoming a big talking point. One exiled businessman from Russia, Professor, his name is Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and he was quoted in that Sunday Times article as saying the following about Putin's state of mind, and I quote, "He has found himself in an information bubble which forms a very distorted picture of the world in his eyes. What does that mean for the rest of us? Well, it means he's very dangerous. Does that mean he's capable of pressing the red button?" The nuclear button. No, this is him. I'm still quoting him here, Prof. Apologies. So he says, does that mean he's capable of pressing the red button, the nuclear button, that is? I hope that he hasn't gone that far yet in his understanding of the world, but one could never be confident of this. How long do European leaders stand on the sidelines and saying, we are giving you help, Zelensky, but we just can't get involved?
Well, they've said that, as you know, but they are taking steps that are unprecedented in terms of both economic sanctions and military assistance to Ukraine, short of troops. This question about whether Putin is serious about the nuclear option, which he has alluded to repeatedly throughout, is for Putin experts, not myself, to speculate about, but the speculation among those that I follow is that he is sufficiently committed to his vision of the future that he'll either be brought down by his own people in some way, which seems to be very unlikely at the moment, or he will press ahead with escalating. That's why this nuclear fire in the plant in the south, Zaporizhzhia, is so significant, because it's a way of him signaling that he is prepared to creatively use the nuclear option. And the escalation possibilities he has not foreclosed. So we are really in dangerous waters here, And I don't know how else to say it. And each day is another, oh my God.
Professor, I thank you very much for your time and analysis of this situation. International relations expert, Professor John Stremlau.